Hey guys, welcome back to the Girlfriends and Goals YouTube channel. My name is Samaria and I'm joined by my best friend and co-host Miosha. And today we're reviewing not Married at First Sight, child, Love is Blind.
You ready?
Love is Blind season 5, episodes 8 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
Which anyway, before we get into that, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and let us know in the comments what you thought about the hot mess that was episode 8 and episode 9. Okay, what I was gonna say is that I feel like they should have just dropped the wedding episode. Like at this point, suspense is waning. I
But
feel
they
like
didn't have a
no,
choice. They didn't have a choice. They only have two couples. So now we have to suffer
yeah.
through them picking wedding dresses that we've already seen, by the way.
Yeah, on the previews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we didn't really need to see it. But I did hear, a lot of stuff has come out because these people just won't stop talking. like, like sheesh, they just will not stop talking. We won't do any spoilers just because we know like some people want to see the end. But
Mm-hmm.
just though there's a lot of stuff coming out, but apparently there was an additional couple that ended up not like their story ended up not being shown. It was
Mm-hmm.
actually cut. So there are things happening. Uche's defending himself on Instagram, fighting for his life.
As
We
he
still,
should be. I
as he
mean,
should be, but there's nothing really he can say. We already see him. Like
it's
we
gone
see
too
each
far.
other, at this point. So okay. So they start this episode with Uche and Milton. So
Yes.
Uche is trying to have a conversation and I feel like he enjoys being the main character, so he's always trying to distinguish himself. So
Mm-hmm.
he's talking about, well, Lydia handled it this way, but I handled it differently. So he's always trying to put himself in a position where, look how I did what was right, and this other person
Mm-hmm.
didn't. And of course, I hate that.
Yeah. And the entire conversation was him trying to convince Milton that Lydia is crazy. She's this bad person, which I just think is completely inappropriate. He says that him and Milton are friends. No, you're not. You are only invested because you don't want to see Lydia win. I don't even think he really wants Lydia back per se in
Right.
anything serious. He just doesn't want to see her have a happy ending. You do not care about Milton.
At all.
And the look on Milton's face was giving, I loved it. Just so uninterested.
He handled it so perfectly. Like,
For him to be 24 and these people to be 30 and 33.
somebody give this man the Unbothered Award because he deserves it at this point. he
He
does,
kept looking away like,
right. He's
and and then, well, I don't want to jump too far
too far
ahead
ahead.
unless you had something else to add about the conversation, but he basically just said, listen, you have your perspective, she has hers, I have mine. I'm not trying to get in the details. No, I don't need the screenshots.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Uche just seemed so perplexed, like, wait, what? You don't
Right.
want to be in the drama?
Is this what maturity looks like? Huh?
He's
like,
just
yeah.
like,
Deer in
yes.
headlights. Talking about I was trying to be the nice guy when I broke up with her. Uche, I could see you walking an older woman across the street and I still wouldn't believe you're the nice guy. like, I think it's done. like, it's a wrap. You have to rehabilitate your entire image at this point for anyone to be like, oh, that's a nice guy. It's not
Yeah.
gonna happen.
And
Uh,
I'm glad Milton didn't buy into it. I mean, I don't think he could have handled that conversation any better than what he
yeah,
did.
I learned from him for sure.
Listen, we
So,
on different planes.
yeah. And then when he tried to be like, don't let her control you, don't let her get in between you and your friends. Y'all aren't even friends like that, first of all, but we've repeatedly seen Milton. If there's one thing that I hate, it's someone who doesn't have a good grasp of the situation trying to or give advice. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've seen repeatedly where Milton is not a pushover, right?
Mm-mm.
And so it's like, why would you assume that he is like just because he's trying to pacify and appease his person, which I feel like in relationships you kind of just do, because you
Yeah.
care about the person that you're with. But he's like, don't let her control you. Don't let her get between you and your friends. You're not my friend any more than Lydia is Aaliyah's friend. So relax.
Where was all this friendship when they were in the pod? You never really seen them together one on one very much. Also, one more thing to call out. He says he knows that Lydia knew that he would be there, and he cares for accountability for Aaliyah. Really?
Because
Because when you had the conversation with Aaliyah, you act like that wasn't a possibility. Now all of a sudden you have proof. I'm glad Milton didn't bite.
full of it.
Thank you.
I love Milton for that. There are things that I'm not too fond of him for
Mhm.
during these 2 episodes, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But they go back, and I think Uche's trying to reiterate what
Nobody
happened
cares.
and explain it to the group. And one thing I want to note, like Johnny, first of all, Johnny is all of us when we first heard this, like with the jaw drop. That was me when I found out the situation. And for Stacey to be like, "Is your face okay?"
She was looking for any reason.
We'll get into Stacey a little bit later, but I just thought that was unnecessary. Like, no, her face is not okay. This man just dropped all these details, girl. This is hot tea. Of course, I'm shocked, you know? So I didn't think that was necessary.
Stacey didn't have to do all that. She was looking for any reason
She
to
was,
stir up something with Johnny.
yeah.
And I don't understand why, because Izzy isn't even worth it. But okay.
Yeah, but I can understand a little bit,
Well, yeah,
not
because she was talking smack about her.
because she
But
was talking smack about her. So I get her being like, okay, I want to go my way and let her go her way. But at 33, I
I'll
just,
say this. She picked the right one to have that comment with. Excuse
because if,
me? Something wrong with my face?
right.
I'm just saying. She picked the right one. Because even if Johnny had been talking smack.
Anyways, so we have Miriam and Uche. And can I just say, I don't know nothing about Miriam and her skincare. I think she's come out and talked about her brand that she has
Yeah.
now. But when she said, "Listen, I'm not Aaliyah and Lydia. You're not gonna make me cry." I'm like, yes, let's give it to him because he deserves. This is what he's deserved this entire season, and someone had to say it. So I'm glad that it was her, and she never backed down.
Well, aside, she really didn't do anything. He was being really rude to her
He
when
was
her, like all the other girls, were chiming in on the conversation. And I find it very interesting
that he singled her
that the
out.
Black woman, he was so quickly to dismiss. I wrote down, what did he say? Oh, Miriam, be quiet. He like shooed her away with his hand.
Literally.
Oh, I want to hear what Stacey has to say. Why you didn't keep that same energy for the other women? I
And
know
listen,
why.
Miriam is Nigerian. I don't know if they're from the same tribe. I don't know if she is an Igbo girl, but he picked the right one. He picked the absolute right one. She was not having it. She's like, listen, you could play with Aaliyah, you could play with Lydia, but you're not gonna play with me.
And
And
then
she's
he
right.
follows it up with the, oh, you're just bitter.
For
Reaching,
what?
reaching. And it irritates me that unfortunately, whenever a Black woman speaks up, says anything, you could just be sipping your water. Oh, you're bitter.
Right.
For
They love
doing
to
what
throw that
other
word
women
out.
do. Just, but he should have known that was going to send her to the next level. Come on now.
She has nothing to be bitter about. To be very frank, and we've all said it, her interaction with him was not pleasant. What does she have to be bitter about?
Like he
Interview
said,
style conversations.
he thinks he's the main character and every woman wants him. So,
He thinks he's the prize, honey.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really enjoy. Okay, but he did have a point where he talked about how her story was a little sketchy in the pods. I can't, Miriam, I'm team you, but
That it was.
yeah,
That aside, that his interaction with her was rude. It was uncalled for.
absolutely,
I agree. She
1000%.
left more questions than answers. But in that particular situation where all the girls were chiming in,
Yeah,
taking up for Lydia, why
her?
did you have that energy for her?
Exactly. Exactly. So Lydia was saying like, I'm happy, I'm thriving, I'm in love with my fiance, and that's bothering him. And I think she's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't like to lose, and he has lost in many ways. Like, and he's still losing. Showing up to that event was a loss for him. It was.
Why?
There was
Other
no point.
And it was so obvious. You came to stir the pot to
Yeah.
break them up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When Lydia came back, she was talking to Maris and Johnny.
Mm,
And so I'm glad that Johnny said, like, when he was there, he did say some convincing things, because again, I
mhm.
think we're all Johnny, where we're like, we believe Lydia, we believe Uche with some things, and the truth has to be somewhere in the middle there, like neither one
Yeah.
of them is saying everything. And then you do have perceptions that are taking this situation to another level. But
But I think it doesn't matter because she's found her person. He
mm,
called off things with with Aaliyah. And so at this point, what is the point of him?
yeah.
Oh, it's because you care so much about Aaliyah. You don't.
Yeah, I don't know if this would be considered a spoiler, the
Mm.
whatever happened between him and Aaliyah following that luncheon.
And
Um,
even with that, I don't even know if I fully believe it.
so apparently, if you guys haven't watched on Lauren and Cameron from season 1, their YouTube channel, Hanging with the Hamiltons, Cameron did a
Mhm.
very detailed interview with Aaliyah, which I appreciated because we got to hear her perspective of everything that happened, and how long she put up with whatever she put up with. And I think it's worthwhile. I think she's been called all types of crazies on the internet.
Mhm.
And in some cases, I think we did see her giving way too much grace in a situation where we knew the person didn't deserve the grace. So that's why people were calling her the things that they were calling her. But it's a great interview, so you guys should definitely check that out. I just watched it this morning. Um, okay, so Lydia said, yeah, he said I was looking at his stories or something. And I'm like, Lydia.
That part, just own it. You know you were. And it's fine.
And then he said that she was looking at his stories, which made Maris respond like, "Oh, that's what you do with someone who you're with. You'd be like trying to see what they are." But it's like, no, she wasn't just looking at his stories. She was looking at the stories of people who she didn't know that he knew. And so I think that was what made that weird. Does that make her insane? That alone? No, but I do think it was a little maybe uncalled for, but we don't know what he did that led her to do that. So who even knows at this
That, and even if he hadn't done anything yet,
point? Mhm.
maybe I don't know. I think that there was
Her
something there that pushed her to look.
led her to.
And I don't know, I've heard this from other people in their recaps, and that it's not uncommon, apparently, like if you're newly dating someone, to keep a more vigilant eye just because of how people be moving apparently in these dating streets. So
Hmm.
it's like
Yeah,
you
I
have
don't
their
know. Maybe it
word,
is.
and then sometimes there's a need to make sure that their word is true. So
Yeah, I don't know.
y'all let us know in the comments.
Please, because to me, it's like I understand going to a person's page, but watching their stories from your Instagram, like,
She
I
should
don't
have
think
had a fake
get a burner.
Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something. But anyway, all right. So this is the second conversation that Uche and Milton have. And Uche's like, I'm just trying to be honest. And she blows up at me. You are not just trying to be honest. You are trying to control the narrative, and you are
Mhm.
expecting her to sit there and take whatever you were feeding, and she was not here for it. Now, I agree with how Lydia reacted in the
Mm.
situation. I think the only thing that she could have done better was maybe not even sat down with him in the first place. Like, I don't owe you a conversation. I have a fiance. You don't have anybody. Like, just leave me alone. So that's the only thing she could have done better. But I can understand, like, you've been out here talking stuff about me. I'm about to let you get a piece of my mind. So I don't disagree with her blowing up. But I think Uche is the king of half truths.
I'll give my thoughts on how I feel about her blowing up later with her
Okay.
conversation with Milton. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Milton said he didn't doubt anything that was said. And that was that was the conversation where he was like, this isn't the Pythagorean theorem. This is, what do you say, multi something calculus. I felt like I
Girl.
multi-dimensional calculus. And I'm like,
I don't know. I was just
whatever
looking
that
at
means.
Uche's face and how confused he looked. Like, really, dude? Yeah, really.
He said, you got to put it in legal terms for me to consume it. But I'm like, whatever that means, Milton, whatever you say, I support it. I just love how he handled it. Your problems aren't my problems. Your relationship with her is not my relationship with her.
Hmm.
That has nothing to do with me. I'll hear you out for the sake of this process, but my name is Bennett and I ain't in it. You're not protecting me. I don't trust you enough to be somebody who's protecting me. And I felt the
Yeah.
same way in the next conversation with
Yes.
Izzy and Chris and Johnny and Stacey. I'll let you start off with that conversation.
Yeah. So
Oh,
Chris is,
sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Uche said something about he went into the pods asking Milton not to hurt Lydia. And I'm like, if she was so crazy,
Why would you?
why why do you care about her? Okay. So
Yeah,
that's it.
we can't make sense of it.
All right.
It
Okay.
don't add up. Nope.
Moving on.
All right. So we have Chris talking to Izzy
Hmm.
to clear things up. And so Chris is basically saying, like, hey, I heard you told Johnny that I may have said some disparaging things about her, as far as I guess whenever they were able to connect back with the guys
Yeah.
after they realized that, oh, she told you one thing,
Yep.
she told me another. And Izzy is basically like, oh, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. I wouldn't say the situation was getting hype, but definitely when Stacey walked up, she could tell that there was some energy of like, oh, I don't know if y'all are on the same page about what happened. Now, I'm gonna ask you, how do you feel about Chris going to confront? He didn't confront, but to have a conversation with Izzy about what he said to Johnny.
Okay. I think if I had a significant other and someone was saying things to them like that I said,
Mm-hmm.
I might want to clear that up and be like, hey, what's your end game here? Like what's going on? So I don't mind it. I probably would have just left it, but I can
Mm.
definitely understand wanting to be like, especially in this produced environment where they probably would have had to have a sit down. I can understand being like, hey, don't tell her things I didn't say. Don't misrepresent me. Like you have your situation, I have mine. It's best that we let things go.
And from my recollection, I don't remember Chris saying anything bad about Johnny other than him just saying, hey, it sounds like she may have told us different things.
Even then he handled it in such a gentlemanly way. You
Yeah.
know, it was never talking down to her. It was just like, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm gonna take a step back and assess the situation for myself. But he was never, yeah, he never said anything about her. Izzy wants to be superior too bad, just like Uche. So he said,
Mm.
obviously I cut her off. And it's like he gets some type of like, I don't know, pleasure from being like, I was the one who ended things. And
Well, that, and he follows it up with by saying, like, oh, and you know, she said, I love you 4 times.
what is the point if you are happy? And Johnny said this later, but if you're so happy in your relationship, I just cannot imagine being content in my situation and having so much to say. Like, it's for me, it would be a okay, I don't think she's a great person, but different people act differently with other, with other interactions, other situations. So I wish them the best, and that's that. I don't see myself being so pressed.
So I wrote down 2 things. One, Izzy and Uche seem to be using the excuse of, oh, I'm looking out for my friends, I'm looking out for our boys. That's
Literally
a lie.
wrote that down.
2, I wrote that both of these men are jealous of the connections that the women have made. And
Yes.
that I
They're
wouldn't
with
even say
better
they,
men.
right. And I would say that I don't even know if they know the full context of how real these connections are. It's just the fact that on the surface level, it appears as if they've made real connections. Things are going okay for them. And Izzy knows that there's this portion of that's like looming about him and Stacey's relationship.
Yes.
And I feel like that's also like the icing on the cake while he can't just let go of the whole Johnny thing because he's not securing what he has with Stacey.
Yeah,
Does that
absolutely.
make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It makes
Okay.
perfect sense because when things aren't right in your own house, like it's easy to feel envious that someone who you don't think is up to your standard got someone who you think is better than you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Izzy thinks. I think that's what he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just could not understand why he was trying to convince Chris that she's a bad person. Oh, I'm looking out for you.
I
Oh,
see
she said,
myself in you. We've heard that before. Too many times this season. They should call this season the I see myself in you season. Because
that or the season of sabotage, because that's what these men are on. That's the only reason why you would even engage in that. And then it gets even more uncomfortable when Stacey comes up
and says that she thought she was leaving the drama. Girl,
okay, so
okay.
I'll say this. I think she feels a way about Johnny
Yes.
separately, but because I do think there is a portion of Stacey that we hear later on that is utterly annoyed by how much Izzy is invested in what Chris and Johnny have going on. So I think she wants smoke with Johnny, but not for the same reasons.
Okay, I can agree with that. I will
Okay.
say to Stacey's credit, because when Johnny sat down and she was like, I felt like you were deceitful because you didn't share what your connections were and you knew
Which
that.
is not true.
I feel like Stacey doesn't owe anybody that. She didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to say this is who my connection is with.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I don't think Johnny's right with that. But putting it out there that everybody thinks that Johnny is flaky clearly isn't true. We see that later when the girls are like, "Oh, well, she's my friend. What lies is she
Mm-hmm.
telling?" Like at least two of the girls were like confused about this statement about
Yeah.
Johnny being flaky. So putting it out there that everybody thinks it. And we kind of alluded to this when Izzy said everyone thinks you're flaky. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like Stacey thinks it. And now he's making that everybody, you know?
Yeah. And I also think too, so the way this show is set up, it really shouldn't be a competition. It should just be whoever you make the strongest connection with. But I do think that there is this competitive spirit of, okay, well, who's going to win them over when I don't really know that that should be there. But it makes sense as to why she wouldn't tell Johnny all of her business.
But and Johnny's saying that she thinks Stacey changed herself a little bit to make sure that she was needing whatever she wasn't. I could see that happening, even if it's not intentional. I could see her
Hmm.
hearing, "Oh, well, he thinks I'm this, he thinks I'm that," and that's a negative. And Stacey being like, "Okay, well, I'm learning about him because she won't shut up because she keeps running her mouth around here, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna use that to my advantage."
And Johnny, that's on you. You should have kept your mouth shut a bit more.
She should have, but a lot of them make this mistake.
Hmm.
Okay, one thing that I really hate is when one woman uses a relationship with a man to one up another woman. And that's what I think
Mm.
Stacey did in this situation. So when she was like saying negative things about Johnny, and Chris
Hmm.
is like, okay, first of all, she's not what the word. What's the word they keep using? Shifty. What is the word? Sketchy.
Sketchy.
Yeah. She's
Sketchy.
like, first of all, she's not sketchy. She's not a bad person. He tries to defend her. And Stacey's like, well, why didn't you propose to her? Because he's not stupid. And they were clearly in a situation where I don't care how much you love
Hmm.
somebody, if there are signs showing, hey, this person is someone I'm interested in, but we might not be ready for the next step just yet,
Hmm.
then you take your time, you slow stuff down. And so that's what he was doing. But putting them on the defensive, like, oh, well, if she was so great, you would have asked her to marry her. It just gave off, well, someone proposed to me. So I must
What you got? Not a
yeah,
ring.
I think that's so classless, and I did lose a bit of respect for Stacey. I felt like throughout that whole time, if you are an adult and you have issues with something someone has said about you, you have two options. Let it go, keep your
Hmm.
distance from that person, or go to Johnny and say, "Hey, when the whole Izzy breakup thing happened, you said this, it bothered me, and I would like us to have a cordial relationship, but that's not cool what you did. Give her the opportunity to apologize so y'all are on the same playing field." But to do what she did, I thought was super uncalled for. And then the fact that Izzy's the man is just, oh,
It's yeah, it makes it even worse. I
yeah.
was disappointed in her when she did that. And for her to be such a straight shooter, I wish she could have just pulled her to the side and say, "Hey, I heard, I know we don't have to be close friends," and just leave it at that
Yeah.
and let Izzy continue to embarrass himself for coming at this woman.
I think Stacey might be a recovering mean girl and
Mm.
maybe not so much recovering during this episode.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just
I
can't
felt
imagine.
at points she was a girl's girl by like not talking crap about Johnny, but it's showing through where like maybe she's backsliding. Is
Yeah, like kicking a horse while it's down. What do they say? What's that saying? I don't know. I don't even know these
Yeah.
sayings. But yeah, kicking a dead horse while it's down or whatever it is. Y'all know what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. Okay. And then going to the girls and being like, this isn't the time when Maris was trying to like, oh, I love you
Mhm.
guys. And I think everybody has a different perception. Um, she's like, this is not the time for, a kumbaya. She didn't say
Mhm.
kumbaya, but she said, this is not the time for everybody to see each other's perspectives. So I think it irritated her that other people didn't see Johnny the way that she saw her, especially in that moment. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
anyway.
That was
Oh, sorry. Izzy getting
oh.
technical. We did not break up. We did not break up. We're never together. Okay, sir. Like you,
And something that I wrote too is that he seems to be hell-bent on showing how much more Johnny was into him, but
mhm,
then feels a way that Johnny had another option all while he had other options.
mhm,
It's like,
mhm.
oh, I need to be your number one,
Right.
but you can't have other number ones.
Exactly.
And which
Exactly.
is odd because the premise of this process isn't about, oh, well, you're going to make multiple connections. It's the final connection that matters. But it,
Mhm.
it almost felt like he just needed that for more validation. Like, oh, she was so into me.
He
But
needs it.
I really wasn't that into her. Well, you
But
were.
something happens later that for me confirms how into her he actually was, and we can talk about that
Hmm.
then. But I felt for Johnny when she said, I've made mistakes, but I really try to be good to people. And I've said this
Hmm.
from the beginning. I really hope she learns from the mistakes. I really hope that in her relationship with Chris, she, you know, has the opportunity to become better. I'm rooting for her, even though I think currently she might be a little bit of a hot mess. But I'm rooting for her. I think she needs to, when things don't go her way, she needs to learn how to keep her mouth shut and not drag people just because she doesn't get what it is that she wants. She needs to learn how to handle those situations better. But I'm rooting for her.
I'm glad she spilled the tea on his credit. I'm
And she knew that and someone else did it until episode 9. So
let's keep
okay.
going.
So Lydia and Milton, when he's like
Yeah. He's
trying
like
to
big upping
encourage
her.
her,
Hmm.
I think I don't know if this was the scene where he was saying like be more like Milton. I didn't like that. And for several reasons that I'll talk about later when we get to episode 9. But yeah, I don't love that, but I appreciated him trying to encourage her like nobody else matters. It's us, it's our
Hmm.
connection. So I appreciated that.
Yeah.
Okay. Stacey and Izzy go back home and she's letting him have it.
As she should.
Yeah.
Okay, before you get into describing it,
Okay.
I'm just gonna say that I think he was drunk.
He
He looked like
and this isn't the first time that I felt that way.
flush. Just his
His eyes.
eyes, just he was like rocking just a little bit. Just
Yeah.
I don't know if he had like too many. I don't know. He just did not look well. And then the
Mhm.
crying solidified the drunkenness for me. Y'all know them people where they just like start drinking, they get way too emotional at any little thing, send them into a crying fit.
Yeah, I
That
agree
was
with
this moment.
I
Um,
agree with Stacey here wholeheartedly. Why are you so concerned? Because he is pressed, and I don't think that if I were the person he was in a relationship with, I would be like Stacey. Like why are you bringing this up every chance you get? And it can't be because Chris is my boy because he doesn't even seem to like you. When she was like he doesn't seem to like you, he didn't seem to want to defend you. He cared about defending her. He doesn't care about what you're
mhm,
saying. So if someone doesn't care about what you're saying, forget them. They're crazy. I disagree with that part because I don't think Chris is crazy at all. But
mhm.
yeah, I agreed with her on most of it.
Yeah, and he seems to be most passionate, as she said, when it comes to anything
Mm,
regarding Johnny. And she's just like, hey, I want you to be all in just
for
because
me.
of you and I and just for me. And what did he say? Like, oh, you railing on her turned me on. What is that
Why,
to say?
why are you so excited about someone being dragged down as
Because
opposed to
there's
uplifted?
something deep going on with
What?
him, I think.
There's a lot.
There's
There's a lot going on with him.
And I don't want to take it there, but I think I just think there's more there, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So when Stacey was like, "It's crazy, they're crazy, it'll never work out." I don't know. I don't like when people talk about other people's relationship. I kind of want Chris and Johnny to work out now, just out of spite. but I hope they can figure stuff out. He said, "Let me talk," and she said, "I am, and I'm giving my opinion while you're talking." Girl, that is not how talking and listening to someone else works at all.
If he was as drunk as
No.
he was, maybe he was taking too long to respond.
No, it was he would get started talking and then she would just everything he would say, she would cut in. And I even noticed that. And
Yeah,
I'm no Izzy fan, but I
I'll
do
give you
think she
that.
was cutting him off quite a bit. And it felt like I'm baby brothering you. Like
Mhm.
I
I
know what I'm talking about. You need to shut up and listen to me. And then even saying, I am listening and I'm giving my opinion while, okay, well, I don't feel heard when you do that. So stop it.
Yeah.
Cut it out.
I'll say none of his responses were making sense, even from what I did hear. So, I mean, was she right? No, but just own the fact that you had deeper feelings for this woman
And you're trying
and
to
that you need to work on moving past it. What did he say? Oh, Johnny was just a pot chick. She says, oh, well, I was a pot chick too, trying to downplay what they have. So
Yep.
I understand her frustration and him just not owning it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand her frustration also with just wanting to be appreciated for her. Like it shouldn't take someone else to make me feel like I'm amazing. And you need to see that I'm amazing, not just, oh, when I see someone who's not so great, then I think you're
Hmm.
amazing. Like I'm not trying to be compared to anybody to be great. I should be great all on my own. So I felt like that was a very valid point. Um,
And then it takes a turn.
it, boy, does it.
I just I feel like he feels like he's not enough. He goes to the closet.
Okay. I will never tell somebody to think they're not enough. I do think there are certain people who we're compatible with and certain people we are not. So I think his I'm not enoughness is just that he and her might not be compatible. Because I don't see him ever being enough for her, not because he's not enough as a person, but because she just wants something else. She wants something that's more compatible with her lifestyle and who she is and all that stuff. Because they talked
Oh,
about the cooking stuff too,
oh
right?
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. So that happened in that scene too,
Yeah.
where she's basically saying, hey, you were one way in the pods,
Hmm.
promising all these things, and now that we're out, I'm pulling a lot of the weight around the home. And he he basically says, like, oh, well, I have been doing things. She says, well,
She
what?
said, "What?" And he's like, "Well, you. That's up to you to no, no. Since you've been doing things, what have you been doing?"
What it sounds like has happened is they've got settled in,
Got cooked.
and Stacey has settled maybe into taking the lead with the domestic things that he
Mhm.
promised that he would be of more help with,
Yeah,
and it's not happening. So,
yeah. And even when he named stuff, like I think he named that he cleaned one time. And the most that he could say was that he tries to be supportive. He tries to be there for her. And it's like, okay, I appreciate the support that you're giving me, but you promised that you would cook and I ain't had a meal from you yet. So emotionally, great. I'm glad you're doing those things. Physically, you need to get up and do more around here.
mhm,
So I
yeah.
think that's a very fair thing for him to say. He has a lot of growing to do, and I think that makes him feel inadequate. The amount of growth that he has to do to be with a woman who can stand on her own.
Mhm,
Yeah. So
yeah.
okay. So we go to Milton and Lydia, and Milton is in the bed with his shoes on. Izzy, in a few episodes, like a few episodes ago, had his shoes on the bed. What is up with shoes in the bed this season? I don't
What
know.
is up with shoes in the house? Period.
Period. Okay, but I put here that in this moment, I started to see that Milton needs to understand Lydia will not be him. I appreciate how calm he is. He handles he handles things very well. But that's not her. And saying be like me, be more like Milton, I think is a turn off. Like I can learn from you, but for
Mhm.
you to present yourself as the paragon of handling situations,
Mhm.
especially as my partner, I wouldn't find that warm and inviting.
Yeah, and uh, all throughout this process, he's been like, "Oh, she's a firecracker. She's emotional. She's loud. She's this. She's that." So, if you know all of these things and this is what you signed up for, why are you complaining now?
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think they can both learn from each other. He
Yeah.
can learn more to tap into his emotions because being a robot and acting unbothered by everything, I don't think is
Mhm.
ideal either. So
Mhm.
I think they may be on extreme ends of the spectrum and
Okay.
they can both learn from
Learn
each
from each
other.
other.
I do think that he did have a valid point,
For sure.
uh, you know, which we can get to a little bit later,
Yeah.
when
But
they sat
Lydia's
down.
30, and not to say like when
Yeah.
you're 30, you're stuck in your ways, but he has to understand that she's been this way for a long time and it's going to take way more than you. Like she has to see you as an example
Mhm.
to want to be like you. You can't tell her that. And so I think he needs to learn that lesson.
Yeah,
Um,
and she just may not be for you in that
yeah,
aspect, and in terms of picking a spouse, I do think that that's something you should be thinking about.
for sure.
How do they react and handle different situations? What example will this be for our kids? And will that fit into our family dynamic? Because don't think you're going to be reacting that way with my family. I mean,
Girl.
it goes deep. So,
Yeah. So Stacey and Izzy had a conversation at her Pilates studio.
hmm
I felt like she was at the beginning of this conversation still being a little condescending and cutting him off. Like it was giving like I deserve to talk and I deserve to always be heard, but not necessarily I want to be heard. So I don't know. It was something about her this episode that just struck
so,
me the wrong way.
so something that I wanted to say earlier, and it relates to them coming together at the Pilates studio, is
Mhm.
that I feel like Izzy was being a bit manipulative by
Mm.
taking a conversation about really about correction, right? And
Yes.
that jumping to I'm not enough in tears. I feel like he did that to disarm her and to
Mhm.
deflect. And so
Interesting.
going into yeah, this conversation, which it happens later, but going into the conversation with at the Pilates studio, he
Yeah.
was just saying how he was hurt really bad, even though he's putting forth his best efforts.
I think he really was hurt. I don't know if he was being manipulative when he went in the closet and did all the crying. I think he really was hurt. I think he really is realizing that he's not for her. And even the way that she talks to him, I will say, I don't know that she talks like that to everybody. I think she just doesn't have a level of respect for Izzy. Understandably. Like, and you ain't gonna find no argument here. But I don't think she has like that respect for him. And I think when you're someone who realizes that your partner or who thinks your partner is out of your league anyway, and
Mhm.
they hold themselves like they are, which she shouldn't have to bring herself down for him,
Mhm.
right? But they hold themselves confidently the way that she should. I think he really is feeling inadequate.
Yeah, I just felt like nothing about that conversation warranted
That
the way
emotion.
that he reacted. Saying like, "Hey, you promised me X. I'm not getting X.
Hmm.
How can we work to get there?" And his response is, "Oh, well, I am doing X."
And just because you're
But
doing
you're
your
not.
best, right? Just because you're doing your best, that doesn't mean you're meeting the need, right?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and so with the cooking example, we have to eat every day. Oh, well, I'm not home. Now it's every excuse. So
Mhm.
I could agree with you. Maybe, she is talking down, but I also think she's being very factual in that, like,
Yes.
these are the things that you're not doing. And it seems like he already feels a way that he's not enough in general for her, maybe in regards to the money thing. But now this is like, okay, well, also I'm not doing the X, but you actually have control over that.
Mhm.
So I think that could also be adding to her frustration of like, okay, something that you very much have control over, you're not doing anything about.
Yeah,
So,
very fair. I guess we could talk about in that conversation, Stacey said something like, I don't talk to guys how I talk to you. And I was like, is that a good thing? Or I wasn't sure. But she
mm,
seemed to think that it was a good thing that she talks to him differently. So they met Izzy's mom. I felt like this meeting wasn't very exciting. Like there's not much that I have to say about it. I don't think I think she gave the typical concern. She asked the typical questions. She received the cliche answers. And that was that. I didn't think much of the meeting with his mom.
I didn't have anything.
Sounds
Mm-mm.
good. All right. Milton and Lydia, though. Now I have notes with this family.
Ooh,
It's
ooh, ooh,
giving very much the Huxtables. It's giving black excellence. It's giving poise. I enjoyed watching them as a family. I did. And he was nervous with her coming into that dynamic. He's like, I'm not really looking forward to you meeting my parents.
Well, what
And I
he
could see
said, even more than her meeting, he said he don't like to bring friends around or
period.
people around, period. I was just like, that's a strong statement.
And I think it's funny that some of the things that he said about his family, she said about him later on.
Mm.
Like especially about not showing
Yeah,
emotion,
he's like his
like
family.
his family. Like that's why you can react to a person like Uche, the way you respond to the way you respond to him, because you come from a certain family that probably would respond in the same way and wouldn't give foolishness the time of day. So Lydia comes in and she's her like cute, bubbly self. And I felt like his family wasn't feeding into the cute and the bubbly, but they were polite. And you could sense like a tension between cute and bubbly and just polite, but they weren't rude to her. They weren't mean. They welcomed her as best they could, I guess. And she kept cursing around them, and I don't know if it's a black family thing, but I cringed every time. I'm like, no, that's his mama. You cannot say the D word. I don't care. You cannot say the A word. Like you can't say these words with his family.
I mean, I wrote that the family is very uptight. Like, you don't expect there to go there and like be comfortable and be like, hey, or not the cursing aside, the energy is just uptight. Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you think uptight in general or uptight because this is a very
Uptight in general.
interesting?
I think his family is like that. For him to say that, oh, my family, it's hard for me to bring other people around. I really don't bring friends around. That's because you know how your family is and they carry themselves a certain way. They want probably the people who come around to be a certain way. So
Hmm.
the energy is tight. I've been around families like that. And I don't think it's just because he's bringing a new girl around. I think this is just how they are. And
I think it's probably magnified because it's not just a new
oh
girl,
yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah. And the
TV
cameras are
show
there
and
too.
engagement.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed watching his family. I did.
Yeah.
I loved it.
What did
Uh
the sister say? She was like, "Oh, she's gonna Google you." When the mom was asking questions, gonna have
the
the
sister seemed
FBI.
more relaxed than the parents, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the energy was just tight, very awkward.
He said, "Can we eat first?" Because they were like, "Okay, so I hear an accent. Where are you from? What do you do?" Da da da. Da. And he's like, "Bruh, let's get some food in us." The sister said it's phony. I was like, "Dang!" To their faces, like
Yeah,
I thought that was harsh.
it was harsh. And then the mom just came right out and said, "What does a 30-year-old want with a 24-year-old?"
I can understand a mom asking that though,
Yeah,
because it's just a 6 year difference, but 24 and 30, there's a lot of stuff that can happen in those
uh,
6 years.
and another
24
thing.
year old man, 30-year-old woman.
Yeah, another thing. I wrote down that I was like, yeah, this is how they always are, was the fact that he didn't tell his parents that they were living together.
Mhm.
Um, for him to be 24 going on 25, you know, been in the workforce, for him to not tell them that, I'm like, yeah, they always are like this, which is fine. But
it's when the mom said marriage is a business deal, and she said you have to do a SWOT analysis. I haven't heard that term since maybe marketing class or working in corporate. But the fact that she said it about, I agree with her. Let me just start there. I do agree with her on that, but I just thought it was funny that she said a SWOT analysis for love. Like, you did not hear
Uh,
that on Love Is Blind, Miss Rita. Because I think that was where
yeah,
they write Rita.
I
It
I
makes
could
good
agree
sense.
partially.
Mhm.
That the sister said it also in their meeting later on. So
Yeah.
maybe that's just how they approach things. I agree partially.
Yeah. I agree. I think you don't want to remove emotion out of it, but I think if you lead with SWOT analysis and have some emotion
Hmm.
around the corner
It
somewhere.
a lot more detail than what they're getting into so far.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. When they asked Lydia like the things that she likes about him, I felt like she didn't say anything special that gave me, oh, marry this man today. She said
Mm-mm.
stuff like, well, he
How
told
can
me.
she? It's only been um,
But other people have had deep and strong connections. I just don't see it with them in that short period of time.
yeah. What does the sister said? She seems to have an answer for everything. So even the answer she was giving was like, they weren't impressed.
But I get it because I'm not impressed either. Not with Lydia. I mean, just with this relationship completely.
Mm-mm.
And if I were a family member, I understand why the family feels the way they feel. He is 24 years old, and as mature as he is, I think they know better than we do. He has some maturing to do. And going into something as serious as a marriage after an experiment like this with someone who's much older and has lived a life, I think is super concerning. So if
Mm-hmm.
I were his family, I might feel the same way that they do.
And I think the process alone it causes concern.
Yeah.
Something that the sister said, she was like, "Oh, I know James. I know when he's this or he's that,
Mhm.
but he doesn't seem sure on this." I don't necessarily agree with that.
Mhm.
I don't think that Milton is sure on Lydia. That aside,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I agree that the sister would know for sure
Yeah.
if the brother.
Mhm.
I don't know about that. Mm.
Yeah. I think
He's 24 is young, but I don't know. Like he goes on later to talk about how close they are and they aren't.
I think the sister would know. Here's what I don't think. I don't think he would want to hear it from the sister.
Mm,
I think she would know. But I don't know what the age gap is between him and his sister. But not that I think she knows everything. I think she shouldn't make that type of a bold statement because there's probably a lot of stuff that she doesn't know about him.
mhm.
But I think an older sister, sometimes even a younger sister who's like in the same age range. I think sisters know.
Mm. I
Yeah.
think even if he found the right pick in this process, I don't think she would think it because
Mm.
the imagine of what we've seen of this family and then him being like, "Oh, this is the process I'm gonna take to find a wife."
If
It
he had
doesn't
found
scream. Hmm?
if you have another 24-year-old married, I don't know. I think marriage is a big deal to them.
I
And
think
so
marriage is a
maybe,
big deal, but I think the process alone
yeah. I think
it would be very hard to convince this family that this is the process you should be taking in to get them on board. So even if you met the perfect person, the right fit, she
mhm,
was this, and this, and this. Um, I just don't know that I see this family being convinced of anything that
yeah.
this would be the process
I think
to
it's
do it
two
in.
things. I think one, it's the process, right? So I
Mhm,
agree. I don't think they would be here for the process, but I
mhm.
also think it's the relationship, like the person
Oh
who.
well, yeah, and Lydia
So I
too.
could see them being more welcoming to someone 24, 23, and being like, no, this is still a business deal and you don't need to go into the marriage. This process is insane. Don't go into the marriage.
Mhm,
But I could also see them being like, okay, maybe I could see some type of relationship here. I think right here, Lydia has two strikes against her because the process and because they're not
mhm.
sure about her.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I enjoyed the awkwardness of it all. I enjoy seeing how very like direct the mom was. Like it was fun to watch to me.
All I can say, if they do say yes, Thanksgiving will be interesting.
It will be. And also like the sister was like, oh, so what makes you ready now? And Lydia's like, I've been through a whole lot of shit in my life. And I'm like, girl, but that's not
And
a
that means you're ready?
right.
Mm,
It doesn't. So yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. But I think it shows why she wants it, but it doesn't show why she's ready for it.
Yeah.
So dress shopping went the way it went. The dresses look good.
So we're on episode 9.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't have much to
Yeah,
say
we can
about
skip the dress and the
okay.
tuck shopping because I don't have anything.
It sounds good. Izzy took Stacey on the airplane date. He's like, Stacey's
Mhm.
dad said love is first class, so I wanted to make her feel good. Okay, no. Stacey's dad said love wants to fly first class on a trip to a different country, not a cute little date. No, that the show might be paying for because we don't know. So yeah, let's not confuse what Stacey's dad said, Izzy.
Stacey's dad had bars.
He
Shoot.
did. He did. All right. So they talked about how close he had gotten with her family and how calming he is, which do you have something to say about that? You had a
I
reaction.
do. I don't see this calming energy. From what I've seen of Izzy
Okay.
on screen, I think in the pods, he
Yeah.
was smooth as butter.
Mhm.
Just, I have not seen that from him outside of the pods. I
I
don't get
think,
calming. I get very
yeah.
nervous. I get anxious. I get, what did you say, clunky?
I don't know. I don't know what
I
happens.
think that was a word you used last time. And I was like, I'm gonna have to use that. But yeah, have y'all seen calming energy from this guy?
You know what I think it is? I think when they get around his family, he has no choice but to be a mellow version of himself.
Of his family?
No, when they get around her family, he
Oh,
has no
her family.
choice but
Okay.
to assume the role of, okay, I'm gonna just chill.
Get in.
So I think that's what the family is seeing because the mom mentioned it at the bridal shop too. So I think that's what they're
Mm-hmm.
seeing. I think you know how you adjust, you adapt to different
Mm-hmm.
situations that you're in. I think when he's around her family, he has to adapt to how he can be with them. And so I think that's where the calming stuff is coming from. But I said, I just don't see it. So I agree with you.
See, we here on that piece.
Okay. So two things happen. So it's the Stacey and Izzy debt thing that we can get into, and then we can end on Jessica and Milton in that dinner.
Oh yeah, and Izzy's family, before we get there, won't be at the wedding. And he goes on to say about how happy he is that he'll be marrying into her family and have all this support. But I wrote down, I wonder how Stacey feels about that. We really didn't get
Yeah.
to hear much about her thoughts on it because I do think there may be thoughts there, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we come to this scene where they're packing stuff up.
Ooh.
The silence was loud.
And the way that they set it up, there was no B-roll footage. There was nothing. So I'm just like,
They just threw
what
us into the
happened?
deep end. And so I was like, I don't know, Stacey's been a little quiet. What's going on?
And the way he was trying to stuff that stuff in the suitcase, I'm like, you can't roll them, roll half, stuff half,
Oh
whatever.
man. Okay. So we come to find out they had a conversation about finances. He's had ample opportunity to tell her about the debt situation, which he told Johnny about in the pods, which
And
shows she was his number one.
I wrote down that Stacey mentioned that they did talk about finances in the pod. Maybe not about the credit thing, but she
Mm,
did mention it in that scene. She was like, we talked about finances in the pod. I've
yeah,
asked questions. So up until this point, we thought the finances hadn't come up until they got home.
outside. I don't know.
That's
Even
what
the
she said.
even the financial conversation they had that we saw, it was more about her financial expectations, not where do you stand financially.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, and yes, I think most sane people would be like, oh, we on the topic of finances? Well, here's where I stand. Person I'm about to marry. But Izzy did not get those hints. intentionally he missed them. Like the hint was thrown at him and he kept dodging it every time it seems. He was like, I'm not
It,
catching this hint at all.
so last review, I mentioned that the way Stacey was acting with the parents was giving me, she
Hmm.
knows something and she's like pushing.
Hmm.
And maybe I was reaching about it, but there was something about her energy where I was just like, she knows more and she's trying to either make him uncomfortable or like nudge him to have a conversation about where he is. Cause he kind of had the energy of, well, yeah, I don't make as much and this or that, but we good. We good. We
When you
good.
say you don't make that much, what dollar amount?
I feel like she already was getting the sense that something was there and
Interesting.
was dropping nuggets, trying to nudge him. He wasn't taking the hits. He was like,
Yep. Playing dodgeball.
yeah. She asked a simple question of, what did she say? They were at the gas station. Hey, you don't want to use your credit card
You
points.
get points. Yeah.
And it's safer too. Don't ever use a debit card at a gas station if you can help it.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, I wanted to have a formal conversation instead of a conversation on a whim.
But you've had so many opportunities for a formal conversation that either you could have initiated or when she initiated other things. So that's no excuse. It does seem like he was hiding it, and not even because he kept on saying, well, it's not like I was hiding it. I think he was very scared because he knows, and whatever he's told her, I don't believe it was just $3,500. I would need to
Oh,
see, pull up
we we
creditkarma.com.
need we need the actual report.
Yes.
We need the line by line because
Yeah.
that whole and it wasn't even that much 3,500. No, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
$3,500 would not have you acting like this.
If you have other debts that you are paying consistently and on time, like a car note, or I don't know, for a credit card, I think he said that was from college.
He oversimplified it. It's not that simple.
It
What did
can't,
she said? She said that she also feels like she can't trust him because he rambles and it feels like he's avoiding.
she
And
can't trust
that's,
him.
huh?
She cannot trust him. We know that for sure.
Yeah. And I think that probably led to some of her frustrations in some of these conversations where it's like, get to it. Don't send me all over the place and confuse me. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that part, but I do believe that he can't be trusted, especially like if Stacey were to go through with this marriage, he can't be on her credit cards. They need to have separate bank accounts. Everything needs to be separate because he can't be trusted. And if he's coming from a place where he doesn't have a lot of money and he hasn't managed it well, you're not about to have access to mine so that you can mismanage that too.
And even if things are separate, it depends on the state. A lot of times when marriages end, it's communal. So she would need to have her ducks really in a row
Yeah,
to not set herself up.
it's a
And
cost
I
for them.
mentioned on the last review, like
Mhm.
with Izzy, I don't think it's just that he doesn't make enough money.
Yeah.
I think that it's, hey, the mindset when it comes to money,
Yes.
and also now he hasn't been truthful.
Yeah,
So
I 100% agree with
yeah,
that, especially the mindset thing.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, again, he told Johnny all this information and not Stacey, so that was his number one, and he needs to stop acting like he wasn't feeling that girl. We can end with the Milton and Lydia conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to say this really quick. So in
Yeah.
that conversation, he says that he feels like he's scared and that he's walking on eggshells. He feels like there was a lot of miscommunication. He feels sick to his stomach and doesn't feels like, oh, she's gonna leave him. I feel like all of that is true, probably, but I don't know. I
She should leave him.
I
He
feel
should
like there's
leave this like that.
he wants this reassurance, like, you're not going to leave me, you're not going to leave me, you're not going to leave me. But it's almost a bit manipulative, I think, because it's like whenever we have hard conversations, you
Yeah,
can't get so wrapped up in me not leaving you. Like, we have to have these conversations level headed,
yeah,
face on. So that's all I wanted to add on that.
absolutely agree. All right,
Okay.
so Milton has the meeting with his sister, which I wish he would listen to his sister more, because every time she says, well, marriage can be like this, he's like, yeah, I know marriage can be like that. And, we're going to get in there and figure it out. And I think people who are unmarried have this idea that, well, we can get through whatever. And, like some people who are unmarried feel like, oh, yeah, whatever comes, we'll be able to handle it. But I wish he would listen to his sister more, who is married and who has kids, when she says, I have a good partnership. And I'm telling you, even in a good partnership, there can be things that you can't anticipate. So,
Mm-hmm.
and this is where I'm like, Milton can't hear this stuff from his sister.
Mm-mm.
He needs
No.
somebody else. Um,
Yeah, that's why like he said, they have a different dynamic, different level of closeness. So I
and
don't
he's
know.
he's probably trying to prove his independence to
Oh
his
yeah,
sister
because they
maybe
very
too.
much treat
Yeah,
him like little, what did it say, little
Lil
James the
James.
fifth.
Yeah. And so I think he has a lot to prove, so that's why. But do you want to go to the dinner and tell me how you felt about that whole interaction with him and Lydia?
One thing on the sister she mentioned that I agree with a lot of what she said, but I didn't agree with how she felt like it was going to be a family decision,
Yeah.
that they should be a
Yes.
part of big decisions. Like, maybe what college he went to, maybe buying his first car. But
Hmm.
at 24 going into 25, you should be encouraging him to make more independent decisions
Yeah.
so that he does gain the confidence in his manhood. So that was the only thing I didn't agree with.
I love that. Yes, agreed.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right. So Lydia and the dinner. What were your thoughts about that?
All right. So Milton said, you wake up mad. And she's like, I have a reason. Lydia clearly feels a way that her and Milton don't have the same standards as far as their cleanliness
Mm.
and keeping the home. He's leaving food everywhere, not washing dishes, towels on the floor, which is very interesting to me, given seeing his family and just how on top of things they seem to be. I think they mentioned a military background. So to hear that he's keeping his home this way, I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Lydia says that she doesn't want to have to keep repeating herself. And in that moment, I felt very much her taking, it seemed like she doesn't want to, but more of a motherly role.
She
And
has
she
to.
doesn't want to be
Yeah.
on top of him. And I'm like, Milton, she wants you to be independent in that way and not tell you, but here's where your immaturity is showing.
How many times can she gently say it before you take her
Mm-hmm.
serious? And she said, I don't think you're taking me seriously when I say these things,
Mm-hmm.
and I need you to. Like my living situation, that would upset me. If someone was like leaving food here and there and not washing, like that is gross. I wouldn't like that at all. So I understood. And then it comes up that he felt a way about the Uche situation, like how she handled it.
Yeah. I feel like two things can be true at the same time.
What are the two things?
I think she could have handled it better. Like he said, you shouldn't have went back the second time, clearly.
So when you
But I
leave, you leave.
also think when you're dealing with a person like Uche, kudos to you if you could just hold it together and just let this person spew whatever that's not true about you, especially on a big platform. So that's
And
why I
Milk,
think,
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was saying, and Milton doesn't have the history with Uche that Lydia has. So for him to be like, I handle things a certain way, I do this and I do that. For him to be saying that, it's like you weren't the one who's been dealing with this man for 2 years. You don't know all the things, or maybe he does at this point, but you don't
Hmm.
know all the things that I've gone through with this person. So yes, that person does elicit a very emotional response from me, because
Hmm.
I was the one fighting through that stuff. You just met him last week in the pods. So you might not have that emotional thing. First of all, she's an emotional person anyway, right?
Hmm.
And she owns that. But then when someone's taking you and taking you through the ringer, yeah, you're gonna have some type of visceral response.
Yeah. So what he also called out was that he feels like he can't tell her things or correct her.
Yes.
And I think that she does get defensive. I mean,
She said, this is who I am. And yeah, that's great, but we each have to change. Like, you want me to change how I handle the home, I am giving you feedback. Like, we each have to be willing to take feedback from the other person. And it seems like she's not willing. Granted, I don't love the way he does it. I hate that he says, be more like Milton. I hate that he says, well, this is how I handled it versus how
Hmm.
you handled it. I hate that. But she does need to listen to him.
Yeah, and I could appreciate how he didn't run after her in that moment. I can.
But she didn't want to be. She was like, I need some time.
Yeah, I could appreciate how he's like, okay, I'm gonna sit here and eat my food. And then that scene, they was just eating while the other person was.
I'll tell you what, I'm like that. I'll just give me silence. Honestly. Just be quiet
Ah,
for some time. That'll help me calm down.
they were tearing that food up. I tell you, and maybe just giving themselves a chance to get their thoughts together. But yeah, she needs to work on that. And
She
in
does.
marriage, I think it's unrealistic that you're not going to have to evolve or change anything about yourself. You're
Yeah.
both going to have to concede on certain things. That's what partnership is. If you don't want to make changes,
Even with my friendships, I feel like there are certain things like,
if I tell you like, hey, I don't like how you did X or it hurt my
yeah,
feelings, I think it's okay to be like, oh, okay, well, I'll work on not doing that. Now, am
yeah,
I going to ask you to change as a person? Of course not.
exactly.
But we are
Or
all going to
me.
do right. We're all going to do things to our friends, our family, where it's like you may need correction. But I don't know. I think I could appreciate how Milton wasn't just like, okay, like it was a dialogue back and forth. I think there's this assumption that because of his age, lack of experience, that he would just let Lydia bulldoze over him, and I did
Yeah.
not get that vibe
Yeah.
in that
So
scene. So
her unwillingness to change, I think, is a deal breaker. So we'll
yeah.
see what happens next week on the wedding episodes. But
Yeah.
I can't wait for this hot mess of a reunion because you know they're gonna bring
Ah,
people back. They're probably gonna bring Uche because he gave them all the views this season. So yeah, we shall see. But let
yeah.
us know in the comments what you thought, and we'll see y'all on the next one.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.